including pro se assistance with answers and motions, and we evaluate people for eligibility for modifications and map applications and other programs. So we had someone come in on a Thursday with a tax lien foreclosure where there was about $43,000 owed on the tax lien, and the auction was scheduled the following Monday. So we did some quick evaluation, and it looked like even though the arrears exceeded the MAP program limits, we thought there might be some flexibility to negotiate with a tax lien servicer, or that the client could come up with some money. And we prepared an order to show cause attaching the New York State MAP eligibility document, and as well as our affidavit saying that we thought that he would be eligible for it. So with that order to show cause, it did get signed by the judge, and ultimately we got the sale postponed, and that gave us time to apply to the program. The thing that's sort of impressive about New York State MAP as compared to the New York City MAP is that the time between application and closing is much shorter than under the prior program. So a lot of our loans closed within I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, which is really amazing. But yeah, ultimately we were able to negotiate down some of the arrears, and the client was able to come up with some money, and so we were able to save his home that was completely mortgage-free. The only threat of foreclosure came from this tax lien, which now is paid off because of the New York State MAP program. For other clients, we've used it for a lot of times we're seeing people who had modifications who have redefaulted. And usually we have one client that redefaulted because the Con Edison came to her house and said that there's a very dangerous gas leak, and she needed a lot of money to repair the problem that caused it, and she'd fallen behind on her very affordable HAMP modification, which we'd actually helped her get about 1.5 years prior. So yeah, again, we were able to reinstate her to that affordable modification using the New York State MAP. I don't know, is there, does someone else want to talk about the program, or does anyone have questions about sort of how we use it? I, in fact, just yesterday had a very similar situation to the first situation where it looks like someone, their tax lien foreclosure is scheduled for next Monday, but they came in to see us on Thursday, and she has about $13,000, and she owes about $54,000. So I think when she pays down the $13,000, it puts her much closer to the eligibility for MAP. New York City Advocates had a conversation with Herman at the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, who also works on the MAP program, and they made it clear that there are certain things that are bright line, kind of, you can't get around. So the 120% AMI, that some people have incomes below that, is a hardline thing. If they had income above that, it triggers some other federal lending laws and things like that. So that's something that you can't get around. But things like if someone's near the limit, you should kind of go for it, because there might be, like I said, some room to negotiate or ways to find money. But don't let that be a barrier to you advocating for your client to try and get the maximum under the program. Awesome. And one of the other messages, one of the other messages we got too was just that it's really important to get as many applications in right now, so that we can show that this is a much needed resource for homeowners in the state and a good use for the settlement funds, so that we can continue, the Attorney General could then fund the program beyond its current size. So I want to encourage people to apply.
And that's a really good place to interject that, it's kind of a big wink from us that, the more money we spend, the better the program looks. So if you think you have someone who is a good candidate and you can get all their documents and submit a complete package, we highly recommend that you do so. With that, Justin, thank you. Carrie, do you want to speak for a minute?
Sure. My name is Carrie Talbot. I'm a staff attorney at Legal Assistance of Western New York. I've been doing foreclosure work for a little over 2 years. I want to echo a lot of what Justin said. We didn't have any involvement in the New York City MAP program, being an upstate program. But we have found that the New York State MAP program has been really effective in helping our clients deal with things other than just mortgage arrears. We've had, I think, 5 successful applications so far. And several of them have been for things other than just payoff and reinstatement. We've had one that dealt with a city tax foreclosure, and we had another that dealt with, there was a modification settlement that involved the client needing to pay off a tax lien, essentially the 2014 tax arrears. So we've had a lot of luck, I think, with getting this program to help clients out of sort of the unconventional situations as well. We've also found it to be a very effective bargaining chip, either in settlement conferences or in pre-foreclosure situations. Banks really like to hear that you potentially have money on the way, you know, particularly in sort of vulnerable cases where they may not see money otherwise. We've had a lot of luck getting adjournments in settlement conferences where we wouldn't otherwise. We had one case where a client was being threatened with foreclosure. She got the letter indicating that a summons and complaint was on the way, and we were able to get a litigation hold for her due to her pending MAP application, and then we were able to close on the MAP application without a summons and complaint ever getting filed and without her having to pay any legal fees. So that was a really good outcome for her. So I think that we've found that you know, these are not applications for the faint of heart. They take time. But they end up being a really good outcome for these clients that are sort of at the end of the line.
Great. Thanks, Carrie.
Yes,
anyone?
I add a couple things. Now, thinking also to our time under the New York City MAP for additional uses and advocacy that we've done, you know, occasionally, you know, with the HAMP becoming sort of the standard, the requirement to have down payment as part of getting a modification pretty much disappeared. But you know, now with more and more sort of, well, the number of cases going through New York, through formerly FHA loans going through the FHA DAS program and going to these new trusts and servicers, we have seen an increase in a request for a down payment. And under the New York City MAP program, you know, one of the uses that we had was someone needed to come up with a $25,000 down payment in order to qualify for a modification. And, you know, so that way we're able to get the affordable modification. And he didn't have $25,000, but we were able to close on a MAP loan. And able to get a letter from them, you know, from the New York City MAP, now you could do the same in New York State MAP, saying, yes, we're committing these funds, you know, because it's sort of a chicken and egg thing. Sometimes, like, they won't produce the mod document until they know for sure the money's coming. And so that letter from New York City MAP or New York State MAP can really help you, you know, secure that affordable modification. Now, the other thing we did a lot, too, you know, we have, at least in the Bronx, a lot of homeowners were saddled with piggyback loans at the time of origination. And so we have a lot of underwater homes and really unsecured second liens for amounts up to $100,000. And, you know, in those cases, we have an advocacy letter that we send to the second lien holder asking for a short payoff of usually like around $10,000. And we have closed on MAP loans for that specific purpose, to pay off second liens to make, you know, the first lien modification more affordable within the homeowner's budget by eliminating that second debt. So I just wanted to suggest that, you know, if people see that situation, that's also a use for MAP. And sometimes we've done weird combinations where we've had condo owners who might have a very small mortgage because they've been paying for years, but they had a condo lien, and the condo liens tend to be far below the program limits. So we've done things where we paid off a small mortgage, the remainder of a small mortgage, and paid off the common charges at the same time using MAP funds for both purposes.
Great. Thank you, Justin. Does anyone at this point have any questions? You can raise your hand or type it into the chat box. We can see where we are here. We might have kind of silent people right now. Another thing I wanted to mention too is the center asked me to bring up their escalations program. If you're working with banks and they're giving you trouble getting workout letters, you can ask me or the center for an escalations letter. And the center has really good relationships with a lot of the banks around the state. And where a workout letter can take you sometimes weeks to get, the center can usually get them overnight almost in about 24 hours. So if you are encountering a trouble with getting workout letters, let one of us know and we can help you get that finished quickly. Carrie, Justin, one thing I wanted to ask you guys was how much time do you guys spend when you're actually working up the applications, do you think?
I would say it sort of varies from case to case. A lot of the documents are really similar to a loan modification application. So if you've recently done a loan modification application, you can sort of outsource that a little bit. I would say probably through the closing, we're spending anywhere between 15 and 25 hours on these. Once you factor in, evaluating someone for eligibility, getting all the documents you need, and then sort of all the attendant things that go along with that, like potentially negotiating with secondary lien holders and everything else.
I would say that's a good estimate. I mean, it's hard. I think part of it was that, we had a backlog when the New York City MAP program ended, and we had submitted applications to that program that couldn't then get funded because the funds ran out. And so we wanted them considered for New York State MAP, and initially the approach was to limit our access through limited codes. But then through our advocacy, we got the Center for New York City Neighborhoods and New York State MAP to release 10 revolving codes to every agency. So that was no longer the problem. And so, but what it did do temporarily was it made us make, a priority list of who was going to apply first. And it meant like whatever applications the documentation was the closest to being complete. And so it's, what's hard to estimate is that some clients are better than others about getting you those documents. And I find that's like the biggest challenge is, we need your current pay stub or we need your current bank statement. And everyone's familiar with that experience, I'm sure. So, but in terms of actually doing the application and then maybe some of the other advocacy you have to do, I mean, it doesn't feel onerous. For me, it feels a little bit less onerous than a loan mod application.
Muted.
And stuff like that.
Hey,
I don't know.
Justin,
Was I just muted?
A little bit. Repeat what you just said.
Sure. I don't know how much you missed, but basically I was saying that some of the challenge is the inherent challenge of this work in general, which is getting documents from homeowners. That I find this sort of less onerous than a loan mod application, and part of that is dealing with the people who work with the program are more familiar with their work and more on our side and want to see these cases be successful. So it's not like you're working with the bank and not getting a response and what have you, And now they have the communication log within the portal, and it all feels a little bit easier than loan mod applications.
Yeah, I want to add to that our experience has been that the communication log is really helpful. And anytime that we sort of ran into an issue where we didn't know exactly how to put something in or something didn't quite fit in the boxes, we would just call the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, and they always picked up the phone and they would return our call right away, and it made the process much easier.
And Justin, one thing I wanted to ask you was I know the New York City program had a much longer timeline on actually getting the payout from the program. How have you been dealing with the shorter New York State MAP program? Have you felt that it's easier?
What aspect? I mean, under the New York City program, there wasn't sort of this deadline of you only get a week to get all the sort of documentation in. So that process kind of dragged on, and they had a credit committee that met more infrequently that would review the completed applications. So it took much longer to kind of get a response. So I feel like all the deadlines have shortened up, but all that's done is really made us be a little bit more careful to get a complete application before we start the submission process. We try and limit it to like maybe 1 or 2 documents, if any, are outstanding, but we know they're coming. Is that what you meant? Or do you mean like trying to get payoff and reinstatement letters from adversaries to work on?
No, that was pretty much it. Thank you very much. I think we had a couple questions come in, Alex.
We did, and just right now what we're going to do is we are going to unmute everyone just so everyone can kind of join the conversation. But just please keep in mind that if you have any background noise or if you're on mute, which plays back music, please be cognizant of those things because we will be able to hear them. So with that said, I'm going to unmute everybody.
Unmuted.
Bear with me 1 second. I have a question from Michael Wigatow. Do either of you have guideposts as to when it is appropriate to back away from pursuing a loan mod and applying for MAP? And that was for Carrie and Jeff.
Would be, I mean,
Go ahead.
in situations that we've backed away from a loan mod is usually when someone has already received a HAMP 1 and that they're likely to, they might qualify for a HAMP 2, but it's going to be pretty unaffordable. Then we back away from doing a new mod application and would rather stick with what's a more affordable modification. Those are cases I think of where we stepped away from applying for a mod. When you do the analysis and it comes out where like a tier 2 or a Fannie Freddie standard mod is going to be more expensive or more unaffordable.
That makes sense to me. I don't think we've had a situation where we've had to make a decision for a client, is this modification potentially going to be, you're going to get it, but it's going to be unaffordable. In all of our cases, we've waited until we got a modification denial, and that's when we put in a MAP application. But I think in situations where you know that if you get a modification offer and it's not going to work for the client, then that makes sense. Great, thank you both. We had one more question from Paulette Cook, and I think, Jack, this is more directed towards you. How long will the New York State MAP funds be available, and how much money is left?
Yeah, so thanks, Paulette. That's a good question. The program has been funded for a year. As you all know, it started with that $10 million pot of money. I can't give you the exact number of how much we have left, but I will say that there's a significant amount for every region. So definitely, if you think you have a candidate that is good for MAP, then you should definitely be working up an application for them. Do we have any other questions from anyone?
Just to reiterate that everyone, you are unmuted, so please feel free to speak freely and ask questions.
I guess I'm curious what people might be perceiving as barriers to applying for MAP, or why different groups haven't applied yet.
Yeah, that's a good question. Does anyone want to talk about kind of the barriers that they've been feeling with the MAP program?
Is it just that it's, such a new resource that you hadn't thought of different ways to use it within your practice? But if there are specific barriers, you should definitely, talk to the MAP program because, I think they're interested in making this work as well as possible for everybody.
Yeah, and we are constantly evolving the program. Ellie just mentioned something in the questions that we're now working on ways to use MAP for situations of imminent default. And we've learned that a lot of people are having problems with escrow shortages. And as we're continuing to grow the MAP program, we're finding that we're able to use MAP funds for escrow shortages in the situations of imminent default. So, if you have kind of out-of-the-box situations, definitely give me a call, let me know, because I think I like unique situations. I don't know how our colleagues feel, but I think it's a good way to expand the program and continue to see where we can go with this. Does anyone, keep in mind you're all unmuted, does anyone feel like there are any barriers as legal aid organizations working with the MAP program, that it's too much of a time commitment, or that you're handing them off to housing counselors because they're more in that field in the weeds, or anyone?
Again, everyone, this is a perfect time to talk about it. So if you have any grievances or anything that you want to share, please bring them to light so we can work on them or work on you and fix or resolving those.
Well, at the risk of keeping everyone on here with silence, I do have the website up, and I was going to give you guys a walkthrough if anyone had any questions with the application process or the communication portal or the documents upload, things like that. Does anyone have any questions about the website we could go through?
Everyone can hear, right? I just want to double check.
All right, well, we have a bunch of website experts on this call, which is a good thing. Thank you all for coming. I won't keep you any longer. Justin and Carrie, thank you very much for talking. Whoever wants to do some web stuff, you can stay on here if you'd like. We can talk after. I'll stay on here. And anyone who feels they've gotten everything they can out of this, thank you very much for listening, and be in touch with any help you need.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jack.
Jack, did anybody stay on? Alex?
Yep, we have about 10 people on.
Oh, great.
Take it away, Jack.
So does anyone have any website questions here? Figured we could stay on for the people that want it.
I was a little bit late, Jack, but are you going to walk somebody through an application, or did you already do that?
No, well, I was going to answer questions for people who had them about the website, but it doesn't seem like we have many questions.
people interested in a walkthrough?
If you are interested in a walkthrough, could you either please say yes or type it into the question box? Because we're happy to do that.
Okay, well, we don't have any questions today. I think if anyone does have any specific questions, you can reach out to me directly. We can go. I appreciate everyone being here, and thank you very much.